Hey, I'm Kyle Racky, and you're watching the Proposify Biz Chat. Today, I'm joined with Nicholas Kusmich, and he's going to tell us how he gets 973% ROI on Facebook ads. Check it out. Today, I have Nicholas Kusmich on the show. He is an international speaker. I've actually watched Nicholas speak before, and he's amazing. If anybody ever gets a chance, definitely check him out. He is known as one of the world's leading Facebook ad strategists. He has the highest ROI in the industry, which, as I mentioned, is about 973%.
Actually, 30,973%.
Holy shit! I read the number wrong. Oh, well, now I have to do the title again. 30,000.
Well, it's okay. Let's keep the title as is. Just keep rolling.
Okay. All right. We'll fix that. All right. 30,000. That's incredible. That's way more than I thought. Nicholas, he works with all kinds of influencers, New York Times bestsellers, best-selling authors. What's wrong with me? I can't talk today. Basically, he's the man when it comes to Facebook, and he's going to tell us about some of his tips and strategies. Welcome to the show, Nicholas. That was the most botched intro I think I've ever done.
I like it. I think it sets the tone that we're just going to be real and authentic and just go with the flow today. So I'm excited to spend this next little bit with you, Kyle.
Excellent. Can't wait to chat. I've got a ton of questions, mainly around Facebook, which is what you know a ton about. Sure. I just want to touch on this, though, for a minute, which is the speaking. Because, you're one of the best speakers I've ever seen.
Oh, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, legit. You've brought me to tears. And I saw on your speaking page that you've brought many SaaS founders to tears, so I'm not the only one. One of the things that you said to me, or not said to me, said to the audience that I've been actually repeating this and giving you credit for it for a long time, is that you said that great marketing isn't when you understand your audience, it's when your audience feels understood by you. And you do. I'm not going to give away the punchline, but you tell this really great story that kind of resonates with people and makes them see how that's so. But anyway, I just wanted to say that was a very very poignant statement, and one that I use a lot and say to a lot of people. Nice.
Well, I appreciate that. At least someone's listening and doing something with it.
How did you get involved in speaking? Is that something you've just always been interested in? I know you were a pastor at one point in your life.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So for 14 years of my life, I was a pastor. And 14 years means for at least 50 out of 52 weeks of every single year, I was required to be on a stage. Now, a little bit different kind of stage, but in fact, I would almost argue that it's more challenging because every time you show up on a Sunday morning, those people are demanding that you bring your best. And if you don't, you're going to hear about it at the end of the day. And the other challenge with that is it meant every Sunday meant that you had to bring something different. So the difference between a lot of keynote speakers is that they got a handful of 1, 2, 3 keynote talks, and then they travel around the country speaking about those 3 things. In this case, I was challenged to come up with a new talk 50 weeks out of 52 weeks of every year, and I did that for 14 years straight. So on the one hand, although I've never had formal speakers training or anything like that, the other hand, when you're thrown into the school of hard knocks and you're thrown into a situation that forces you to do that, I think you just pick up things along the way, especially when you have an audience that demands that you entertain, that you deliver good content, that you move them in such a way that causes action, and et cetera, et cetera. So when I stepped away from pastoring a few years ago, I almost mentally said that part of my life is going to die. We're going to just put it on a shelf, and I'm never going to have that opportunity. I'm going to be confined to my office and sit in front of a computer and working with teams to try and build out Facebook ads for people. And I was honestly saddened by it because one of the things that excited me most about pastoring was the fact that I got to share a little something every Sunday morning. But then I got a call one day that said, "Hey, do you want to talk about Facebook ads?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if that's all that interesting of a topic, but I will gladly take that opportunity." And went to this event. There was like 1,300 people in the room, and I'm like thinking to myself, what did I get myself into? Not that I was uncomfortable speaking, but what is this? Why am I all of a sudden talking about something completely different? Do I still remember how to do this? And then as soon as I stepped on stage, it was like a light bulb went off again, and I just rekindled an old passion. And after that, stepping foot off that stage, I said, I need to somehow figure out a way to bring this back into my business. And fortunately, if you can give a couple of good talks that help some people in front of some other influential people who hold events, one thing leads to another. And now speaking, I would say, I could be doing a lot more, in fact, but we were able to turn some of it down, and has become now a significant part of the business. So it's been a nice kind of full circle of the past coming back at me and allowing me to use some of that, what I do today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we could probably talk a lot more about this, but I had a very similar in a way where I was actually raised in the Jehovah's Witness religion, and so I was speaking from age 5. I was up on the platform doing little 5-minute talks, and you could always tell the guys. See, in that religion, only the guys can actually do the talks. So you could always tell the ones that were just born in the religion, because they were really good. By the time they were like teenagers and young adults, they were really, really good. And then the guys who came into it much later in life are usually the ones who are like, they need a bit more practice. But it's a great experience. But let's jump into Facebook, because I know this is on a lot of people's minds. Technically anybody can do Facebook marketing, right? You just hit that boost button on Facebook and there you go. But if people are like me, and I don't run our Facebook ads anymore, I've got a really smart guy who works in our business who is very good at that. Nice. But I know a lot of people struggle with this, because it's like, how do you get ROI? What do you do? Retargeting? Do you do what's ad format? There's so many questions people have, and you've achieved these massive levels of ROI, this like insane over 30,000% ROI. I know it's a loaded question, but maybe can you step through or talk through a little bit of your methodology? I know you've got a really proprietary methodology for how to do this, but share what you can with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I would encourage everybody to stop pressing that boost button. In my opinion, that's kind of Facebook's way to make money from people who have no idea what they're doing. And that just gives you a certificate of Facebook philanthropy. In other words, you donate to Facebook and you make nothing in return. So stop donating to Facebook and see it as an investment vehicle by investing either in yourself to understand how to do this, or in a team or a vendor or a staff member or whatever you need. But it is my belief that, you need to have a real one of the greatest skills I believe a business owner or an entrepreneur can and should have is the ability to turn paid traffic into predictable profit. If you can do that and you have a scalable business, you will never again ever have to worry about, can I grow my business? Can I scale it? Where will my next client or customer come from, or any of that? So for those who might be sitting on the fence about Facebook ads, I'm not necessarily encouraging you to jump off the fence and dive into the deep end, but I am saying if you do have a scalable business and you're looking to acquire new customers and clients at a reasonable rate, probably better than any other form of paid advertising out there, Facebook is something that you should start dipping your toe into. Now, that being said, how can we get 30,000% ROIs when everybody else is struggling to get, 50% or 30% ROIs? And I think it comes down to understanding a couple things. Number one, that Facebook is not pixie dust. There's this perception in the marketplace that you take a little Facebook ads, you sprinkle it on whatever you got going on, and all of a sudden, massive growth and crazy ROI and, all this stuff is happening. That is not the case. If you have what's our language policy on this podcast, Kyle? Is it
you can say fuck, you can say whatever you want.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll reserve that now that I just said I was going to do that. But if you have a shitty sales process, Facebook ads is not going to help you out at all. You're going to need to have a good process, and that's kind of the second point that I want to make for this, is that Facebook, not only is it not pixie dust, but it's a tango. It's a two-stepper, and it's part one of a two-step thing that really makes it work. If you don't have a good sales process, if you don't have a good funnel, as people call it in our industry, if you don't know your metrics of if 100 people see my offer, how many percent or how many of those people are going to say yes? If you don't know the lifetime value of a client or a customer, Facebook ads is going to be tricky for you because it is going to bring the people to your front door, but it's up to you to open the door, let them in, show them the house, and invite them to stay. So those are the kind of two primary things that you need to know. And then moving a step beyond that, and it's what I talk about in my new book, Give. And again, it's why I believe that we get better results than most people out there. It's not because we know the technicalities of Facebook any better than someone else. And when I say the technicalities of it, I'm referring to bidding structures or the type of ad to choose or manual or automatic bids or all this kind of stuff.
Retargeting pixels, that kind of stuff.
Now, I'm not saying you don't need to know that. I'm saying you definitely do need to know that. But if we were going to liken it to an iceberg analogy, I would allude that as the 10% above the surface. So this is what everybody sees. It's what everybody talks about. It's what, hey, look at this new trick that I got on the bidding structure that gets me a tiny incremental results better than the other person. That's all fine and dandy. And most of the Facebook people out there talk about that, and they do a good job. What I believe why we get better results than everybody else is not because we're not focusing on the 10%, although I'm glad to go in any of that direction on this conversation. But what we really focus on is the 90% below the surface, the stuff that people don't actually talk about. It's the reason why someone could be running a Facebook campaign, doing all the right things. And then I can just take a look at it and say, oh, well, the problem is not the Facebook campaign. The problem is the offer on the other side of it. And by tweaking the name of an offer, we've gone from someone getting $12 leads to getting $2 leads, which means more to their bottom line.
Right.
So what that means, how I like to see it is what I call contextual congruence. It's the idea of staying congruent to the context of the platform you're playing on. And I believe that there's 4 M's, and I can go as deep as you want on any of these, but I'll briefly skim them right now. 4 M's make up a really good Facebook advertising campaign or a paid advertising campaign in general. The first M is your message. What I mean by that is most people think what you say is actually more important than how you say it. But I'm going to argue in today's social world, how you convey your message is actually more important than what you say. If 2 people get on a stage and say the exact same thing, but one person says it in a more compelling way, if they say it baked in narrative, if they say it in a way that creates connection, if they say it in such a way that really speaks to the heart, soul, and deeper elements of the person, and this person says the exact same thing, but they're only appealing to the mind of the person, and otherwise the logic, I can almost guarantee that person A will outperform person B despite the content being the exact same thing. So before we go and enter into the power editor and start playing around with bidding or budgeting or any of that, you've got to be very clear on your message. What is it that you're in fact saying that is different from everybody else? And I'll give you one more element of that. Most people, when they're talking about what they do, they talk about it on the element of the promise. In other words, I will show you how to X. I'll show you how to lose weight. I'll show you how to build your business. I'll show you how to, get into ketosis faster. Whatever it be. Now, the good part about that is, you're making a promise. The bad part about that is so are all your competitors. So you're essentially saying the same thing, and you are just noise in the midst of noise, most likely going to be ignored. I would suggest that in a sea of noise, the best way to stand out is not to shout louder than everybody else, but it's to whisper a different song. I mean, it's like you could be in the middle of a huge, busy crowd, and when you hear your jam come on through the speakers, all of a sudden the noise disappears, you hear your jam, and you start moving to a different beat. Right. That's what your message needs to be. Yeah. So that's the first M. The second M is your market. Now, we would simply define that as who is it that you're actually speaking to? Who is it that your prospects are? And I'm not talking about the old school 1980s, what is your customer avatar? If you don't know that by now, God, you have some catching up to do. But I'm talking about getting even more specific than that. And so what I mean by that, I like to say if you were a fly on your prospect's wall during their best of times and during their worst of times, what would you hear and know and say about them? I heard one person, I wish I could quote the name accurately, but it was an advertising legend, and he basically said, if you can't put yourselves in the shoes of your prospects, you have no business being in the business that you're in. And it goes back to the quote that you alluded to when I talked about it earlier, is that a good message is not when your ideal prospects understand you. It's when your ideal prospects feel understood by you. And the only way to do that is to really know who your market is and how to find them. Now, I'm going to argue that Facebook is the easiest and the best way to find them. Sorry, you're going to say something, Kyle, there?
Well, and I just to kind of line up with what you're saying, too, is I think it often helps to, forget about technology, literally be in your audience's shoes. It could be you're selling to a market that you used to be in that business. For example, with us at Proposify, we sell mostly to digital agencies and small agency owners, and we used to run a small agency, so we speak to a lot of the pain that they face. It's not just, oh, do you want to save time writing proposals? It's, do you know, we understand that, we've been there with that feeling of not knowing if your prospect's going to sign your proposal and that sort of thing. And it's I also, another example is, I know a guy who is running a startup that's for in the automotive industry, and he actually took a job selling cars for a month, and he did that not to make money, solely just to know what it's like to be in his audience's shoes. There's so many offline ways that you can do that too, right?
Yeah, it's such a great point, because oftentimes I'll get people who ask, like, how do I know what my prospects want? Man, if you're asking me that question, you're in the wrong business. I mean, how can you not know? Now, sure, you could do market research and all that other fun stuff, but I think, like you're saying, if someone can actually put themselves in a scenario where your business ends up scratching your own itch from before, so you understand the pains, the frustrations, the experiences that people are looking for. I mean, I knew all along those lines, I knew a golf instructor who said, I've got to teach people how to play golf. And so what he did was he retaught himself shooting left-handed. Oh, wow. So he's a right-handed golfer. He retaught himself from scratch how to play golf left-handed, so he could understand what someone is actually going through when they're learning how to play golf for the first time.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that kind of commitment, you can't, for me, example, a couple of years ago, I wrote an article on how not to lose your Facebook ad account. Now, that didn't just stem out of a great idea. It stemmed out of the pure frustration of losing ad accounts and not knowing why that was happening, and then recognizing that my marketplace was experiencing the same thing. So then when I speak to that solution, it's not because I read about it in a book somewhere. It's because I've been through the ringer. I've been in the trenches. I figured it out, and now I can kind of convey the message that I need to convey. It's part of the reason why in our business model, we don't just run an agency. If I only ran an agency, there's no way I could sit across the table from another client and say, well, I don't run ads myself for myself, and I don't know what it's like to have a good funnel, and I don't know what it's like to have a sales These are things that I need to do myself in order to actually allow me to speak with authority when I'm speaking to clients and that sort of thing.
And there's no way to fake it. You need to be a practitioner.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could fake it, but you'll be found out real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
and it won't work out for you.
The thing I like most about what you're saying is, and I know that there's another M in there, so we're going to move into that. But before we just get into that, it's almost coming full circle, because for a long time, traditional agencies, the ones who mostly bought TV ad campaigns and radio and print, they focus mostly on messaging and most on creative.
Right.
Everything went digital. Everybody started getting really into the technical side of things, and funnels and landing pages and pixels and retargeting. Yeah. And then it's almost like now it's the technical side, like you said, the 10% has become easy enough to learn, where everyone's on a level playing field, and now it's all about content and creative and brand and positioning. Right. All the old stuff is now the most relevant. It's the most important. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's why I think in everything, and this is where I distinguish the difference, I think in everything there's an art and a science to it. The science is the technicalities that can be learned, right? The bidding, the structures, all that kind of stuff. The art is much more subtle and nuanced. It's not necessarily, I mean, you could walk into an art gallery and look at a piece of art and be moved by it, and it could sell for $4 million, and you can walk into, a different room in that gallery, see another piece, you're not moved by it, and it sells for $4. And so when you were to ask someone, well, what is the difference between the two? Is it the brush strokes? Possibly, but if they use the same paint and the same stroke pattern when they're so that's not it. There's something happening at a deeper level, which is what I call the art of it. That's why my event is called the Art of Lead Generation. It's why everything that we kind of focus on, contextual congruence, is all about understanding the subtleties that are below the surface. And that, again, yes, comes to the positioning. It comes down to the messaging. I'll take it a step further and say, and not that this may have changed, but maybe there's a reemergence of this, especially in digital now and in a social web 2.0 world. I believe the only reason back then you could create a sale by understanding a little NLP, a little sales objection training, a little like persuasive and influence, strategy, and you could twist someone's arm into a sale even if they didn't want to. And you can add a little scarcity and urgency to that, and bam, you can create a sale. I think we are moving into a season now where people have all been kind of, conned is not the right word, but almost like influenced out. They know the tactics. They know what to expect. They're like, oh, watch the pitches coming in 3 minutes. See how he seeded that before? Look, it's coming. People are used to that now. Yeah. And I think the main thing, I think the two currencies that we are with, there's time and money. And I think one of the key things that causes a transaction in today's day and age is what I'll call resonance. It's how well do we resonate with the person on the other side. And we've seen examples of this. Again, going back to, let's say, a stage talker, you could see I don't know if you've been in the scenario, but I have, where I was sitting in a seminar, dude had everything on point. Nailing the cues, the subtle cues, setting up the sale, working the stage, like doing it all right. Gets to the pitch, makes the pitch. Theoretically, it was a perfect pitch. And I just remember thinking that might be cool, but something doesn't feel right, was actually how I described it. And so I didn't end up buying. In another scenario, same sort of scenario, I was in kind of a seminar. The person was up there, but he just botched the bloody thing. Stumbling over his words. The technology on the PowerPoint wasn't working. It was out of sync, and he's like sweating and flustering all over it. And he's like, oh my God. And he's, just whatever. He gets to the pitch, and he's like, oh, shucks, like forgets to mention a bonus or whatever. And then at the end, he's like, hey, man, whatever. And then you have people literally stand up and run to the back of the room to buy. Now, how did that happen? I think it has, again, much more to do with resonance. How well do we connect with and resonate with the person communicating us, much more than how good of a quote-unquote sales practitioner were they. Right. And I think that's just what we're shifting into in today's Web 2.0 world, where everybody is kind of being sold out. They've seen it all. They've been through it all. They're tired of the fake scarcity, and they're tired of all that stuff that happens online now. I think the better you can become at positioning, the better you can become at communicating your message, and more importantly, the better you can become at connecting with your ideal prospect, the much better off you're going to be, and a much easier time you're going to have when it comes to the actual transaction itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. People, to use a Simpsons analogy, people would rather buy now from Homer Simpson than Lyle Landley, who sold the monorail, sold the townsfolk. It's right. I remember when, there's a few things there. You're right. We know when we're being sold to, and sometimes we're actually okay with it. Like,
yep. Oh, yeah.
There are times when I'm looking at a Facebook ad, and I'm just curious about it. I know I don't want it, but I actually won't click it now because I know they're going to pixel me and kill me with ads everywhere I go on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's other times I'm like, I know I'm going to be retargeted, and I still click it because I'm like, I want to be retargeted. Like, this is awesome.
Right.
I remember one of the really great things you did at a talk. This is almost another way of kind of retargeting is instead of just following the talk with like, okay, follow me on Twitter or go to my website or get this offer or whatever, coupon code, it was text this number to get a video of something cool you were talking about. And I was like, ooh, how does this work? And I texted the number, and then I said, hey, I'm Nicholas. Put in your email address, and I'll send you the video. And then I did it, and then I got the video. It's a great tactic for speaking, and you know that the person is, you're getting in their email drip sequence, but you don't care because the content is great.
Right, and you bring up a great point here. So I believe that there's two golden rules to marketing online. Golden rule number one is you must give before you ask. And notice I say give before you ask rather than give before you take. Giving gives you the ability to even think about asking somebody for something. And that's why the title of my book is called Give, because I believe that's the foundational element of all things online marketing. But what you're talking about is my key golden rule number two, which is every step of the marketing process should be valuable in and of itself. So my premise in any marketing that I do is whether or not somebody buys from me or transacts with me on any level, my desire is that they would walk away from the experience having said, hey, I got a ton of value from that. I may not be ready to buy right now, but I did get a ton of value for that, and it was great. And so exactly what you're talking about. I think if the better I can get at that, where again, I'm disconnected with a result, whether somebody buys from me or not is not of my concern. What I do want though, however, is anytime someone interacts with me, that they do get a valuable experience out of that. And I think if you could do that, then when it comes to someone seeing your ad or you making an offer during a speech to say, hey, text this and you'll get the video, people are willing to do it even though they know there may be a sale attached to it. And I'm not hiding the fact that there may not be a sale attached to it. But people are willing to do it anyways because they know they're going to get value, and hopefully they're going to feel like they're not going to be pressured into a sale. And so I think that comes down to, again, providing value through your marketing and then also being upfront. Sometimes if I do put a limiter on something, in other words, I say, hey, you have up until this time to take advantage of it, I'm upfront in saying, hey, the only reason I'm doing this is because A, I like to reward fast action takers, and it tells me something about you if you can take quick action. But number two, frankly, between me and you, we know that if you forget about this, you're never going to come back to it. So I want you to know that if this is right for you, now would be the time to do it. And if it's not, no worries, go about your day. But I think the more authentic and the more straight up front you can be about these sort of things, including say, hey, I may ask for a sale at some point, I think the better off you're going to be, rather than relying on the strategery, if you will, of good sales tactics and funnels and all the rest of that. I mean, right. Maybe it's just because I have a limited mind and my mind can't, comprehend the complexity of Infusionsoft and funnels and all that kind of stuff. Although I use those tools, I just rather, hey, be real, be authentic, let people know what you're up to. And I think if you can resonate with the right group of people, they're going to transact with you now or later or maybe never, but it doesn't even really matter all that much.
Right, 100%. Now let's move into the next M, because I know that this is part of a bigger thing. You talked about the market, the message. What's next?
Yeah, so the third M is magnet. Now, in the internet marketing world, some people see that as, like lead bait or whatever. It's what can you give in exchange for a name and an email address. But I'm going to look at that from a broader stance. Rather than just say, hey, what can you give in exchange for a name and an email address? I'm gonna challenge people to think about what can I do to provide value to my marketplace that will then attract the right people to me. So whether it's collecting an email address or not, I'm not necessarily interested in that specifically as much as I am in saying, do I know what my marketplace wants, right? That's one of the M's. Do I have a message that resonates and speaks to that marketplace? That's the other M. And now how can I take that in such a way where I could put it into my marketplace knowing that it's going to provide value, knowing that it's going to move the needle for somebody, and knowing that it's going to start a process of people saying, hey, I'm interested in the Nick guy, whether it's I'm going to give him my email, whether it's I'm going to follow him on social, whether it's I'm going to read some of the content that he puts out, whatever it be. What can you put that's going to be strategically created in such a way that, again, magnetizes or attracts the right people into your ecosystem and into your world, knowing that at some point you're going to ask them for a transaction when that time is right. Mm-hmm. So when we're thinking about, and here's kind of the foundation of this, this is what I found, most people give their marketplace crap that they don't want.
Ebooks.
Well, ebooks is one of the big things, I think. But also it's like, hey, I'm just going to go create this 90-minute video and I'm going to give it to my marketplace because trusting that this is what they want. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe they don't want a 90-minute video. Maybe they want a video period. And maybe the topic of your video is completely irrelevant, and just because you're too lazy to create something that they actually want and you're just pulling something from somewhere else, I think there needs to be like this intentional effort to think about, what does my market need? What do they want? What are they communicating? What are the problems that they need solving for? And then how can I come in? And even more so, what is the current market trend that's in line with that problem or solution? And then how can I give it to them in such a way that's easy, short, digestible, implementable, so they can finally start getting some results without ever feeling like, I'm giving them just bait, but not actually delivering anything.
Right.
I think and we can spend.
Yeah, it's a lot of people just holding back. I think sometimes the best offers are the ones where you're actually worried about giving away too much because it's too awesome. right? Like that template that I spent hours and years on perfecting and making awesome, I'm just going to give it away and let them rebrand it and use it for whatever. I've done that before, and I've actually been like, should I do this? Because it's like, yeah, it's almost like the better the lead magnet or whatever that free value that you're giving them away, it should be, it should be so good that it's almost a product unto itself, right?
So the music to my ears, and I'm fortunately getting more and more of this, which makes me feel good, but music to my ears is when somebody, and I have screenshots of this all day long, is when someone says that thing that you gave me was better than this thing that I paid for. Right? Then you know you're on the right track. When they're saying, hey, man, I spent all this money trying to get this, that, and the other. I spent all this money, and none of them combined provided the same value that you did in this thing that you just gave me for free. Right. If you can make that your goal, where you can literally, you will blow your competition out of the water. If they're charging for that stuff and you're giving it for free, I guarantee you'll be positioned as an authority. You'll be positioned as someone who has credibility, and the marketplace will be naturally attracted to you more than the others because of you doing that. So Eben Pagan called it moving the free line years ago. And it was this idea of, free line was really low. It's like, give them something that nobody really wants and then charge. And he says, well, move it up here where you're actually giving stuff away that you would normally charge for. And I think that's a great exercise. And what you alluded to there, Kyle, is perfect. It's like, if you are like on the fence and like, man, I don't think I should give it away because I spent all this time and I could be charging money for it. Yeah, that's the thing that you need to be giving away.
Right. So valuable takeaways here, focusing on the 90%, the market, the message, understanding your audience, making them feel understood by you, and, of course, having a great offer. Now, we're a little longer than most of these episodes are, but there's a couple things. One, I want to talk about your book and some cool things you've got going on, events.
Sure.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about something in that 10%, which is just from that technical side. Yeah. Are there any new things in 2017 that people are missing out on that they should be looking at? Is it Instagram, sponsored stories? Is it video? Is it something in retargeting? I mean, what can you kind of throw out there for us?
Yeah, so one thing I will say about this, and I don't know if this is a cop-out of an answer, but anything that seems new in 2017 is probably not something you should jump on. And you should stick to the stuff that actually works. So the problem that I find with Facebook, and it's not with Facebook in general, but they're always coming out with new things to make the overall experience of the advertiser and the user better. And so, back a few, 6 to 8 months ago, there were lead ads that came out. Just one click of a button, capture name and email address without ever them installing anything. Everyone thought this was the best thing since sliced bread. Everyone jumped on. Everyone was like, oh my God, I'm getting 40-cent leads. This is incredible. I used to pay $2, and then I said, well, how are the leads converting? None of them converted, but damn, I'm getting 40-cent leads. Well, okay, well, get your priorities straight then. And that kind of soon disappeared. Then there were video ads. Now the big thing are bots, messenger ads and automated bots in the messaging process. And here's my take on it. I'm a slow adopter, which means I always take 2 steps back. I let the market decide whether or not something's worth paying attention to or not. And if the market and the stats and the data shows that it's something worth paying attention to, then I will. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So I think in 2017, stuff to pay attention to are, messenger ads, bots, video ads, any of the new stuff that Zuck's rolling out, i.e., stories and all that. I think that's all something to watch. Doesn't mean invest into. Just means watch, but then stick to your guns and stick to what actually works, which is the old school news feed link ads that have driven 90% of the tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue we've done, have literally come off the backs of good static link ads in the news feed, because those are proven to work. So watch the new things, but stay true to the things that work, and I think you're going to be good.
Great. So don't hop on the bandwagon too quickly. Keep an eye out for it.
But it doesn't mean abandon it.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's talk about your book, Give. When did you write it? Why did you write it? Can you give us a little teaser?
Yeah. So quick summary. I mean, I just had, the short of it is I had tons and tons of people continue to come to me and say, like, how can I make this work? We're not in a position to work with you privately. We may not be able to be in a position where we can attend to one of your live events, your 2-day intensives. So what is there out there? Now, I'm not a big fan of courses or trainings per se, because the vast majority of people will buy the course and not do anything with it. And so all of my trainings are literally like 60-minute or 90-minute one-time punch, go and implement, rather than here's a 14-module course. But again, it still was out of reach for a lot of people. So I said, you know what, how can I take like 7 years worth of understanding? Plus I found that there was a hole in the marketplace. How do I take 7 years of understanding of how to make this work and put it into 168 pages? That's just the layman or the advanced marketer both could pick it up, learn something new, and the book itself would be timeless. And so what I mean by that is, if I was just talking tactics, a month ago, this would have been obsolete.
Out of date, yeah.
But when you're talking about strategy that can be kind of passed on forever, how can I do all that? So literally, it took about a year to put together. Most of it was chopping out all the stuff that shouldn't be there and just leaving like the real gold that should be in there. It's finally now, depending on when people are watching this, it's in pre-launch mode as we speak, meaning you could pre-order it on Kindle. We've got a really special promotion going on now. We're at 66% off, so you can buy it for $4. $3.99 on Kindle in pre-order. If you do, a couple things will happen. Number one, you can get a free $197 training that I'll send you absolutely free if you just say, hey, look, I bought this thing. Number two, if you want the soft cover, because not everybody likes to read digital, as soon as it's released, you'll get an email saying, hey, would you like this? You get it for free, just cover shipping. No shenanigans, nothing like that. Literally just send it to you for free, just cover shipping. Thirdly, with a title like Give, it's kind of hard to sell it, right? So 100% of the proceeds that are being generated from the book are being donated to Charity Water. So every penny that's ever made will be going to Scott Harrison's Charity Water. We're going to build some clean water wells in communities that need it. And then lastly, if anybody does in fact share it, and we have a cool little software on the page that allows you to get a personal referral link and share it with others, the 3 people who have the most shares that lead to sales are going to get up to $10,000 in bonuses. So a ticket to my Art of Lead Generation Intensive, which is an $8,000 ticket, a bundle of my top courses, which is a $2,000 offer, and a 55-minute call with me, which is another $2,000 value that you can get. So I literally tried to make it a no-brainer. Yeah. It'll cost you $3. Talk about ROI, 4,000% ROI. If you buy the book for $3.99 and you get $197 training in return, that's a 4,000% ROI. So we're giving people the opportunity to get that. But again, yeah, we just try to make it a no-brainer for people to get involved with it during this time. So that I can get this into as many hands as possible.
That's amazing. I'm getting in on that. I'm like signing up for it now. So
awesome.
Everybody else should do the same. We are also going to post a link to all this in the show notes for you to check it out. Just go to proposify.biz/podcast. Nick, it was a pleasure and honor having you on the show. Thank you so much for being on and sharing your words of wisdom.
Oh man, thanks for letting me hang with you a little bit. I had a great time.
Awesome. Same here.